My name is Sharon Miller, and for 2 long decades, I was entangled in what I believed was a love story. From the outside looking in, Mark and I were the epitome of marital bliss, a perfectly crafted illusion. He had a stable job at a convenience store, and I worked at a corporate office, or so everyone thought. We met in a quaint little coffee shop during our college years. It was love at first sight, or at least that's what romantic comedies led me to believe. "Hey, I couldn't help but notice you from across the room," Mark had said, his smile shy yet inviting. "And here you are, not being able to resist the pull," I joked back. Impressed by his courage to approach me, we hit it off instantly, and soon enough, we were inseparable. When it came time for the wedding, I wanted it to be flawless. I envisioned something that would encapsulate the beauty and simplicity of our love. We chose an outdoor venue surrounded by blooming roses and lilies. I wore a long, flowing dress with a delicate lace bodice, and he wore a classic black tuxedo. We danced under a sky pierced with stars, and when he held me, I thought that love would always feel this perfect. "My beautiful wife," he whispered during our first dance, and I remember thinking how incredibly lucky I was to have him. But as perfect as Mark was, his parents, Rita and Carl, were anything but. I was introduced to them during one of our first few family dinners together, and the coldness in their eyes told me all I needed to know. They didn't like me. To them, I was nothing more than a farmer's girl, a blemish on their high society portrait. "So, Sharon," Carl began, his eyes examining me like a specimen under a microscope, "Mark tells us you're from a rural area. What are your family's ambitions running a little farm?" "Actually, it's more than just a little farm, as you put it. We feed hundreds of families," I replied, forcing a smile, but the condescension in his eyes remained unchanged. "Oh, how quaint," Rita added, her voice dripping with mockery. "A real salt of the earth type of gal, isn't she, Carl?" This was just the start. Every family gathering afterwards followed the same script. Mark and I would walk in hand, then Rita and Carl would find an excuse to undermine me. And Mark, bless him, never noticed, or if he did, he chose not to confront it. I told myself it was a small price to pay for the life I had, for the love I felt for Mark. So I bottled it all up, smiling through the years of backhanded insults and snide remarks. But even the most beautifully crafted illusions crack over time, revealing the flawed reality beneath. I wish I could say that my marriage with Mark was an exception to this rule, but I can't. The life we had built, the man I had devoted myself to, was about to crumble. And when it did, the fall was going to be devastating. But little did they know, I had an ace up my sleeve. The facade of a happy marriage couldn't last forever, no matter how desperately I tried to hold on to it. The cracks in the foundation started appearing a few months ago, subtle yet unmistakable. Mark became increasingly distant, always buried in his phone or lost in thought. I tried to address the elephant in the room, but every conversation would circle back to the same excuses: work stress, fatigue, or some vague form of existential ennui that he couldn't quite articulate. Then one fateful evening, the truth was laid bare. Mark had left his phone on the kitchen counter, buzzing with a new message. I glanced at the screen unintentionally, and there it was. A text from a woman named Lisa. "Can't wait to see you tonight, love," it read. For a moment, I felt like my vision blurred, as if my eyes were refusing to accept the reality before them. My hand shook as I picked up the phone, opening the text thread to find a long history of messages, each one more intimate than the last. There were dinner plans, sweet nothings, and even photographs. The betrayal was comprehensive and undeniable. "Mark, what is this?" I demanded, phone in hand, as he walked into the kitchen. He glanced at the phone and then back at me, his face flushed but weirdly composed. I guess there's no point in hiding it anymore, he said, a touch of relief in his voice. You're cheating on me. I choked out the words as if saying them aloud could somehow reverse their truth. Yes, Sharon, I've been seeing Lisa for a few months now. And you were planning on telling me when? After another 20 years of marriage? He sighed. I never planned on telling you. The audacity of his words struck me like a bolt of lightning. Then why did you marry me? Why waste 20 years of my life? Mark shrugged. I thought it was what I was supposed to do. Get married, have a family, live the dream. But I was wrong, and I'm sorry. His apology was empty, devoid of any real remorse. It was as if he had been rehearsing these lines, waiting for the day he'd finally get to say them. I knew then that there was nothing left to salvage. Our marriage was a hollow shell, a house of cards ready to tumble down at the slightest touch. The next morning, I contacted a divorce attorney and initiated the proceedings. When word got out, Rita and Carl were overjoyed, as though my heartbreak was their long-awaited victory. They called me up, their voices filled with mock concern and veiled jubilation. So we heard the news, Rita said, almost singing the words. Yes, it's unfortunate, I replied, keeping my voice steady. But probably for the best, Carl interjected. You two were always so mismatched. You must be so pleased, I said, my words tinged with a bitterness I didn't bother to hide. Oh, we just want what's best for Mark, Rita replied. I ended the call, gritting my teeth. Little did they know their gloating would soon be replaced by something else entirely, a revelation that would shatter their smug perceptions and tip the scales in a direction they never saw coming. The divorce process was grueling, but the papers were finally signed. With each stroke of the pen, I could feel years of emotional baggage lifting off my shoulders. Mark was equally quick to move on, already publicly flaunting his new relationship. His parents were ecstatic, as though they had been freed from some unbearable yoke. But as they reveled in their petty triumphs, they remained blissfully unaware of the storm that was brewing. A month after the ink had dried on our divorce papers, the grand reveal unfolded. I was featured on the front page of our state newspaper not as a divorcee, not as a broken woman, but as North America's largest grain producer. The headline read, Sharon Miller, the Heartland's Queen of Grain, a revolution in modern farming. The article chronicled my journey in the farming industry, the innovative technologies I had integrated, and the countless families I had impacted. It painted a vivid picture of the empire I had silently built over the years. When Mark stumbled upon the article, his reaction was as predictable as it was entertaining. Sharon, is this true? He called me up, his voice tinged with disbelief and possibly a smidgen of regret. Every word, I answered, basking in the stunned pause that followed. But how? I thought you worked at some corporate job. I do. It's called multitasking, I replied, unable to keep the satisfaction out of my voice. You lied to me. Did I? Or did you never think to ask? You and your parents were so preoccupied with your own preconceptions, you never saw me for who I truly am. Mark was silent, the gravity of the revelation slowly settling in. Then the call from Rita came, and it was deliciously awkward. Sharon, we saw the article, she stammered, her voice a concoction of confusion and reluctant admiration. Yes, it was a good read, wasn't it? I remarked casually. I didn't realize you were. So successful, she continued, struggling to find the right words. Most people don't realize a lot of things until it's too late, I responded. And Mark, he didn't know. He knew as much as you did, which was very little. You all underestimated me, so why would I share my life's work with any of you?" Rita sighed, her defeat almost palpable through the phone. "Well, congratulations, I suppose?" "Thank you, Rita. I knew you'd come around eventually," I said, a smirk forming on my lips. As the news spread like wildfire through our social circles, friends, family, and even distant acquaintances reached out to congratulate me. It was as if I had been reborn, shed a skin, and emerged as a new person, or perhaps I was just finally revealing the person I had always been but never got the credit for. The satisfaction was immense, but what came next was the coup de grace, the cherry on top of my long-awaited vindication. A week after the article's publication, an unexpected convoy rolled up the gravel path leading to my expansive farm. Mark's car followed by his parents. My security team alerted me of their arrival through the intercom. "Mrs. Miller, your ex-husband and his parents are here. Should we send them away?" I considered it for a moment but decided against it. "No, let them in. I want to see this." They stepped out of their cars, their faces a blend of regret, confusion, and a newfound humility that I had never seen before. Mark led the way, his parents trailing behind him like a pair of scolded children. As they approached, I could see them taking in the scene. Rows upon rows of crops staked, of the art farming equipment and workers tending to the fields, all operating like a well-oiled machine. "Sharon, this is incredible," Mark said, his eyes darting around as though trying to take it all in. "It's my life's work," I replied, arms folded. "I had no idea you were capable of something like this," he admitted, shame coloring his words. "That's because you never asked, never cared enough to know who you were actually married to." Carl and Rita finally found their voice, though it was softer, almost a whisper compared to their usual bravado. "Sharon, we were wrong about you," Carl began, his tone trembling. "Yes, we are truly sorry," Rita added, her eyes glossy, perhaps holding back tears. For a moment, I felt a sliver of vindication watching them stand there, broken, humbled, and diminished. They had finally seen me, not as a farmer's girl or a corporate drone, but as a successful, self-made woman. "And what do you want now? Redemption? A fresh start?" I asked, my voice tinged with skepticism. "We just wanted to apologize," Mark stammered, "to make amends." "How very noble of you," I said sarcastically. "We're not expecting you to forgive us," Rita spoke up. "We just want to acknowledge our mistakes." "So you decided to drive all the way here to kneel and shed tears at my doorstep?" "It's the least we could do," Carl said, finally dropping to his knees, soon followed by Rita and Mark. "I never wanted your apologies, your tears, or your acknowledgement," I declared, looking down at them. "I built this empire not to prove anything to you, but to prove it to myself. Your apologies mean nothing to me." Their faces paled, a mixture of shock and realization painting their expressions. I motioned to my security team. "Escort them out." As they were led away, Mark looked back, his eyes searching for something, perhaps a hint of the woman he thought he had married, or maybe a glimmer of a life he could have had if only he had paid attention. "You'll regret this, Sharon," he called out, desperation seeping into his voice. I smiled. "I already told you, Mark, I built this empire for me, not for you or anyone else. You lost any chance of being a part of this the moment you decided I wasn't worth it." As their cars retreated down the gravel path, vanishing into the distance, I stood there, basking in a newfound sense of liberation. The tables had turned, the underdog had triumphed, and revenge, as they say, was sweet. In the days that followed, the farm returned to its normal rhythm. My workers were back in the fields, The machines hummed with efficiency, and I found solace in the labor and leadership that had always been my true calling. But there was one more act left in this drama, an act that would cement my victory and secure my legacy. One morning, my lawyer called. "Sharon, the final papers have been processed. The divorce is officially complete." "Good," I replied. "And what about the other matter we discussed?" He chuckled. "Oh, you're going to love this. Your anonymity in the company is now completely sealed. No one will ever know that you're the majority shareholder of Mark's convenience store chain." "Excellent," I said, savoring the delicious irony. "Put things in motion." 3 days later, Mark received a notice that his convenience store, the one he had poured his heart and soul into, was being shut down for restructuring. He was offered a lower managerial position at a store in another state, basically a demotion. I knew this from my contacts within the company. He called me flustered and angry. "Sharon, did you have anything to do with this?" "What makes you think I'd be involved?" I replied, feigning ignorance. "Don't play games with me. 1 minute I'm running my store, and the next I'm getting shipped off to another state." I paused, letting him stew in his uncertainty. "Well, Mark, it seems life is full of surprises." "You're doing this, aren't you? You're behind all of this." "I have no idea what you're talking about," I said calmly, even though I was relishing every moment. "You'll pay for this, Sharon." Now, where have I heard that before? "Oh, yes, it was right after your parents and you kneeled in my yard. How did that work out for you?" I quipped. He hung up, fuming and defeated. But I wasn't done. The last piece fell into place when a package was delivered to Rita and Carl's house. Inside was a framed copy of the newspaper article featuring me, accompanied by a short note. "Thought you might want to remember the day you knelt in the dirt of North America's largest grain producer. Kind regards, Sharon." My phone buzzed with an incoming message. It was from Rita. "You may have won this round, but don't expect a lifetime of happiness." I replied, "I don't expect happiness, Rita. I create it. Something you might want to consider." And just like that, the final act was complete. I had wrested control of the narrative, undone the years of belittlement and betrayal, and emerged victorious. I hadn't just won. I had annihilated them with the same quiet determination that had built my farming empire. For the first time in years, I sat down in my plush home office chair and felt truly relaxed. I had fought my battle, claimed my victory, and now I was free. Free from the condescension, the betrayal, and the shallow perceptions that had once defined me. I had no delusions. I knew that life wouldn't suddenly be a fairy tale. Mark and his parents wouldn't change. They were too entrenched in their ways. But that didn't matter anymore because I had changed. I had shown them, and myself, just what I was capable of. I leaned back in my chair, looking out over the fields of grain that stretched as far as the eye could see. This land was more than just property. It was a testament to my will, my resilience, and my unyielding desire to define my worth. And so, as the sun dipped below the horizon, casting its golden farewell over my empire, I smiled. I had won, and it felt damn good. Days turned into weeks, and the dust of my revelations and retaliations began to settle. The farm was running smoothly, and life was returning to its usual cadence. But despite the outward normalcy, there was a distinct difference. A weight lifted, an atmosphere changed. I was sitting in my farmhouse, going through reports, when Sarah, my closest confidant and the farm's chief manager, came in. "Sharon, we've received a few buyout offers for some plots of land, and the board is asking for your guidance." I glanced at the details and felt a surge of pride. The offers were tempting, but this land was no longer just an investment. Tell them we're not selling. Not now, not ever. This land is off the market." Sarah looked at me, understanding the unspoken gravity of the decision. "Understood. And if I may say, you've been radiant lately. Whatever you've done, it's like you've transformed." "Let's just say I've cleared the air, purged the toxins," I replied with a smile. Sarah grinned. "Well, it suits you. You've always been formidable, but now it's like you're untouchable." "It's the freedom, Sarah. The freedom of not carrying other people's judgments on my shoulders." "Ah, the sweet taste of vindication." She winked as she left the room, leaving me alone with my thoughts. That evening, my phone buzzed. It was a message from an unknown number, but the tone of the text was all too familiar. "You think you've won, but we'll have the last laugh." I chuckled at the clumsy attempt to unnerve me. I replied, "Laugh all you want, but it won't change the facts. You missed out on something great, and now you have to live with it." I blocked the number, setting the phone aside. Petty threats and childish taunts no longer had a place in my life. Days later, I held a gathering for my employees at the farm, a celebration to mark not just a successful quarter, but also to commemorate the unity and the hard work that had built this empire. As I stood there, looking at the faces of people who had been part of my journey, I felt a sense of completeness that had long eluded me. "Everyone, I just wanted to say thank you," I began, my voice carrying across the crowd. "We've built something amazing here, something that not only feeds bodies but also souls. We're not just workers. We're a family, a community." The applause was heartfelt and robust. As I stepped down from the makeshift stage, Sarah came up to me. "I've never seen you this content. It's like you're a whole new person," she said. "I'm the same person I've always been, Sarah. It's just that now the world knows it too." Sarah hugged me. "Well, whoever you are or were, you're extraordinary. And don't you ever forget that." As the night wore on, the air filled with laughter, music, and stories. Stories not of revenge or vindication, but of growth, strength, and triumph. I realized then that my battle had never really been with Mark or his parents. It was a battle with myself, with my own insecurities and doubts. And I had won, not by defeating them, but by rising above them, by becoming a person they could never hope to comprehend.